good.
My paper bears scars that never made it to my wrists. The battle scars from life's unjust wars, pages and pages of minefields and mass graves on their surface. Thank you for your service. Freedom and joy, a privilege I afford each day because my pain is left here on paper. My pen holds the keys to the pearly gates, sees beyond to the heavens, dances with my loved ones, a foot straddling either world. Even death himself can only stare defiantly as my pen fearlessly etches on teardrop-stained paper and kisses them back to life. And when laughter becomes too heavy, when joy is too sweet and makes my stomach turn, when my saint-like prayers turn into desperate mumbles, heaven traces the embossed outline of the pressed scribbles on my paper and receives the incense that diffuses from my ink. Or when love fails to define herself through my body, though my actions may not yet be fluent in her language, she will make my hand a conduit, driving it to form letters and rhymes to those she longs to reach. My last breath will be through this pen, and though I may be at peace, I will not be at rest, for my words will still be forging their way through the earth on this paper. As long as someone will hear them, as long as someone can read, I will live on. Thank you. Thank you. Hello, everybody. As Pam said, my name is Valerie, and I have a series of poetry today. So they're all kind of, interlocking. And for those of you that haven't heard me speak before, I recently lost both my father and friend last year. And so, traveling through this season known as grief has been a wild ride. And one thing that I didn't expect was the bitterness I felt towards the world for not warning me about grief, because it's something that if you haven't gone through it already, you will. That's the one thing that's certain about this life is you will know grief. And so I felt cheated. I felt led astray, bamboozled. And so I kind of realized that, I'm going to write about grief and share it with those who have gone through it so they can feel heard and seen, but also those who haven't gone through it as a way to somehow not warn you, but at least initiate you gently into the world of grief so that you can at least, when you do go through it, have my little voice in your head telling you that all of the things you're feeling are normal and okay. So my first poem that I'm going to, sorry, I keep blowing into this thing. My first poem is called My Biggest Fear. My biggest fear is that one day I'll forget, that this echo chamber of my memory will absorb the sound of your laughter just long enough that I hear it fade away, that the synapses in my brain playing broken telephone will attempt to describe your gentle, rugged face, but their muddled up words and misfired signals will fail to truly capture your image. That the eyes that bore into mine from the very first time I opened them will slowly get pushed further back into the kitchen cupboard, getting lost behind that fifth bottle of ketchup and ridiculous amounts of Kraft mac and cheese. And before I can stop it, my life is filled with other things I need to remember. I'm afraid that I am human, and therefore am limited, that I have no choice in how well I'll think of you. I fear that it's inevitable, and the day is coming when my eyes will desperately dart back and forth in search of the sound of your voice calling my name, and that it'll sound just as sweet in someone else's mouth. Your throne begins to rust, vinyl records littered with scratches. How could this giant, this flesh and blood and soul be reduced to my fickle, undependable memory? You get smaller as I grow older. I'm afraid that my heart is already starting to heal, because the only thing more painful than losing you is the thought that it won't be as painful anymore. I'm afraid of finding a love that's outside of yours, finding joy despite your absence. How dare this life be wonderful? Threaten me with hope. I don't know if I'm brave enough, strong enough to be okay. My biggest fear is that one day I won't be afraid at all, because I am human and therefore am limited, and even fear can't last always. Yes, unfortunately, even this dark tunnel will eventually have a light at the end of it. I'm afraid I'll be happy, that I'll be peaceful, and most frighteningly of all, I'm afraid that one day I'll find this poem again and truly see that in the end, we all just forget. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And this next one is inspired by a Bible scripture. It's from 1 Kings 19, if you guys are curious. And it's basically, long story short, there's this prophet called Elijah, and he's going through a rough time. And he basically goes to God, and he's like, I'm done. I'm done. Just let me die. I'm tired of all you guys. And everyone's trying to kill me. I'm the only one that knows how to struggle. Like, it's rough. And God is like, all right, dude, like, relax. So basically that whole chapter is the whole beautiful duologue between like God and this prophet who's like going through it. And so that inspired this next poem. It's called I Searched for God. I searched for God in church bells, listened for his Genesis voice in the ringing every hour, stared unblinking at the clock's hypnotic hands, faithfully waiting for the so-called healing that time would allegedly bring. And Sunday would come, the ringing rung, but God was not in the church bells. I searched for God in the joy, in the programmed smiles of well-meaning church folk and the robotic wonder of worship. The rinse and repeat joy that felt so easy before. The joy that was my safety net, but where I once saw strings, I now see holes. Where joy once took trust, it now takes courage. I jumped anyway. But God was not in the joy. I searched for God in the heavens, praying the thunderous boom of his interstellar voice would shatter my disbelief. I built a ladder from the last remaining shards of my hope. I would make my fearful heart stare up at his gargantuan throne in wonderment, force my mind to accept its own frailty and minusculity, punish my eyes in his blinding light for even thinking they could see, let alone understand the mystery of his ways. So I climbed, but God. I found God meditating in the cryptic labyrinth of my doubts, self-assured and unwavering in the blueprintless maze of my jumbled up faith. I found him resting, already acquainted with my darkness, finding peace in my torrential storm because he knew he could silence the waves whenever he wanted. I found him sitting at a well, drawing fresh tears from my weary eyes when I was too weak, too broken to cry on my own. I looked down at my blistered hands, full of splinters, and let go of the ladder I once used to climb to the heavens. I lay down on the cold, hard floor. This was my church, my worship, my heaven, and gently closed my weary eyes. God was in the stillness. This whole time, God was with me. Thank you. All right, this next one here is inspired by a conversation I recently had with a friend who, like many of us, had never gone through grief, and so you say real stupid things to people that have. And so I was just opening up to her about how difficult like celebrating new milestones is. And the response was very much like, what? But if these people were here watching you right now, do you think they'd want you to be all sad and stuff? And I was like, okay, I probably might have said something like that before I knew what it was like, so it's understandable. So I wrote this poem just called Grief to kind of explain, at least for me, because grief is not monolithic, it's different for each person. And so for me, this is my experience. Contrary to popular belief, the sun shines brightest in grief. A hot cup of tea or a stroll with a friend, once a simple pastime, now my tabernacle, a biblical reminder that God might still remember my name. How priceless, how indecipherably wonderful, how brave and selfless are those who travel through the winding cracks in our armor, unrelenting to find us at the bottom of ourselves. With no demands, no fear, no, here, the sun shines brightest. Forgiveness runs free in grief. Few things are more humbling than watching the ground beneath you eagerly grab and claw at the one you loved. So sudden, so easy, without a fight. Few things exist to remind us that we all really are just human, and you really did try. And now that I'm dancing alone, stomping to the disharmonious music of my anger, my bitterness, and unresolved battles, I'm embarrassingly aware that they too, one day, will rot 6 feet deep in this earth. So what else is left then but to forgive? Through grief, I have touched the hem of heaven's cloak. How much clearer God seems, how much closer he feels now that he's sitting by you. I wonder, do you hear me pray? Exchange notes with the Creator? Now that you aren't limited to this earth and this flesh, can you love me the way you always wanted? Does he tell you my secrets? Show you the parts of myself I never got to be? Beyond my brokenness, to whom I truly wanted you to see. Have you found your future grandchildren? Do they dance on your feet like I did? I will choose grief. Excavate the gaping hole, the canyon you left behind in the landscape of my life. Study the formation of every crack, document each broken piece. What a blessing that I get to learn anew all the ways you loved me, ways I would have never fully understood, nor seen, nor cherished had it not been ripped away. Your love for me gains strength in your absence, becomes its final form in your departure, finds its resting place in my grief. So I will wait here, lying still on the bed you made, fully breathing in the lingering perfume of the life you left behind. Yes, joy may come in the morning, but the sun shines brightest in grief. Thank you. And this last poem, some of you have already heard, this was a tribute that I wrote to my dad and my best friend. And it's just called Thank You. Thank you for your broken love, for not waiting until you'd perfected the art before gifting it to me, for loving urgently, immediately, not threatened by my childish preference for perfection, undeterred by my demands for something better, as if I knew any better. Your unabridged, raw love, mined straight from the ground, impurities and all. Never waiting till the crucible ran clear to crown my head. You were the fire and the gold. Thank you for your borrowed time, guarding diamond pebbles in an hourglass that you don't get to spend, gathered minutes you wouldn't get to keep. Never cried before, sorry. Every hour, every moment, every second, every beat, you gladly miscounted and spent a little extra on me, like a poorly planned shopping spree. You really only had just one life. Why spend so much on me? Ran an open tab with the timekeeper. Never watched the clock. All my memories are drowned in your tick-tock. Till I forgot how to walk. I just danced to your tick-tock. Thank you for your reckless hope. Not finding your future in the stars, but wishing on them anyway. Filling my head with a fool's dreams, then daring me to dream even larger than fools. Showing me I had, oh Lord. Okay. Whew. Showing me I had no one's shoes to fill, and my feet would grow as big as I wanted them. That my cup was too deep to be empty, and to pour myself out without fear. Leading an orchestra, composing an opera of me, not knowing if you'd ever get to hear. I wish you'd told me what you knew, just how priceless each moment was with you. I would have saved every penny, haggled every vendor, counted every second, paid for every hour, loved you so much quicker, so much bigger, so much louder. How could I have known it would be so quiet? That after tick-tock comes silence. So what do I say when I have so much to pour, but your cup is full? I have a million different ways to count one more second with you. So what do I say when I'm living your dreams, but you're asleep? When the tick-tock stops, but not my feet, always slightly offbeat. So what do I say when my love outruns the clock? That's simple. I say, thank you. Yeah. Okay.